Justin has requested me on Patreon to review the B-movie I Buried the Living. Released in 1958, it was directed by Albert Band, who specialized in B-movies and spaghetti westerns. He was also the father of Charles Band, who would himself become known for making direct-to-video B-movies through his company Full Moon Features. Albert and Charles Band even worked on a few movies together, most notably co-directing the family film Prehysteria. Curiously, Albert Band would also receive an executive producer credit on Honey, I Blew Up the Kid, probably due to his association with Stuart Gordon, one of the creators of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Back to Buried the Living, this was his second film as a director and his first horror movie. So what did I think of it? Personally, I found the presentation to be a tad dry through most of the movie. A lot of it involves characters just sitting in rooms talking, and what they're saying was not particularly interesting. Obviously, there's only so much Band can do with the low budget and small number of locations, but the dialogue and acting just does not have that extra punch to help it rise above that. It moves along at a somewhat glacial pace, although I was never annoyed with it. There just was not too much there to spark my interest, and the story also has a tendency to feel repetitive. The main character, Robert, puts a black pin on someone's name, he later finds out they died, he tries to take responsibility, people are skeptical, and then we get some variation of this again and again. As I said, a lot of the performances did not leave too much of an impression, with everyone falling into stock roles. The only actor that stood out to me was Theodore Bikel as the Scottish cemetery caretaker Andy McKee, mainly because while everyone else is playing their roles largely straight, he goes for something more comical. Honestly, if you had told me Mike Myers had traveled back in time and put on the makeup to play this role, it would not have been too far-fetched, as McKee felt so much like the sort of character Myers has ordinarily played. I will say, though, that the movie does a really good job of filming the night scenes. Even though much of the film is set at night and in a darkened room, Band is able to highlight the characters and provide the bright mood. One thing I admit that bothers me about modern filmmaking is how night scenes are typically shot, as filmmakers and cinematographers seem scared to switch on the lights and let us get a clear view of what's happening on the screen. This is a low-budget black and white film from the 50s that has long been in the public domain, and the online version I watched was adequate but not spectacular looking. Nonetheless, I could still see the characters in the nighttime scenes without a problem. However, as you can see, the movie played along without too much reaction or investment for me. That would change with the third act, when I felt the story finally brought a jolt of energy. This is when we truly start to see the fear take over Robert, and he worries about the role he might have played in these deaths. There are some turns that add some mystery, and it even seems like the story will go in a wild direction. There's a curiosity about how exactly the film will explain a man dying across the ocean after he puts a black pin on his name, and even what might happen if he switches the black pins for white pins. After that long build-up with not too much happening, it was nice to finally get invested in this strange predicament in the final half hour. What is revealed and what we find out is intriguing and presents its own spin on this kind of story. Of course, something I did wonder while watching the movie is if Robert thinks he's causing these deaths by putting the black pins on the map, he could just stop doing that at any time. His friends are not much help, seeing he's obviously in the state and yet still encouraging him to continue sticking the pins in there. But this is one of those stories where if the main character acted logically, this already fairly short movie would be even shorter. I know I criticized a lot about I Bury the Living, but even with my issues with it, it's not a bad watch. Just largely uneventful through most of it, and not as suspenseful as it's trying to be. It sort of exists in that middle ground of 50s B-movie, above the obvious cheapness from someone like Ed Wood, but not quite on the level of making a low budget look bigger than it actually is like Roger Corman. So I guess it's fitting this was directed by the father of Charles Band, although his son would have probably included a lot more special effects and monsters rather than the more low-key approach presented here. Overall, I thought this was an okay B-movie that mostly picked up in the last third. Now, if you've seen I Buried the Living, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and thank you for the request, Justin.